On Friday, and she council operating on what's going on through that. So, Chief,
Yeah, we had our meeting on Friday. Prior to that, we had discussions, bring updates on the YouTube on some of the projects that we are working on, including the CEC event and all that. And there may be something happening. So we had a meeting on Friday, and we all agreed who's gonna go, Chief, Sculpture, Water Company, and myself. And that we would give participate in the announcement.
we'll get the microphone.
And she also said that allowed us to.
All right, we'll go. Where's the?
Yeah. So, we done that, we were, the community is in a crisis situation where we had created last week.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're finally ready to start. And before we get started, we're going to have Kathy McGuire do an opening prayer for us. I'll pass it over to you, Kathy.
We're waiting for, everybody's going to be on track.
Press the button there.
Hopefully by Friday, all the comedian, to Toronto.
Cornelius, is there anything that we can do right now to
Bonjour.
support the community?
Chigewen, Gaken, Miigwech, Kitinagon,
I'm not sure.
Okumis, Nimishogumis, Ebuasisha. Miigwech, Minokmata Zuinogum Kakashika. Geminato, Wete Shower, Miigwech, Kitinago, Owe, Kizuzian, Wewe Nipimata Zulu. Geminato, Wete, Negabiano, Miigwech, Kitinago. Owe ega kendaman kekwa keni joebak ega. Ki joene mikuya che ki kendaman met pata ziven. Ki jemene to ki wetno mi wet skitenego e joene mishia e kenama mishia ke onde menor partizia que itia ya gaza kagi machawa skawi wika kawani ke simen ka ije pe partizia ka ije ki joyan ke kakena umaga ya wachaki miwech ki partizia ki jemene do miwech kakena umaga ya wach ka kikeno mawishina ke oya chibe matizian kawin ne kawani ke simen ka kipi isi wabandama ka isi bematizian ka isi izwea ke ibets.
Which Kathy? Today we've got translation services courtesy of our friend James Schmuckweb of Webway First Nation, expert translator in his as a part-time job. Okay, so we're going to start the presentation now, go through this, and so we're going to go slowly to allow James time to translate to Fujian for us. This afternoon, we're going to talk about the selection of the preferred corridor, the process of doing this. It can get complicated, so we're going to do our best to simplify it.
Igor Evelyn James Shagwabishikas Wabakring Doji. Evan Gitano Jana Klot Magan, Wagari Tabaj March, where Munje Ikanagatas Jadek. Ego Napichuk Snagsega anaknot tumate gon nanandok winag machuaji gegonais segem cash anakat watch pinamag ko quick debat mochigate gon business tochigate sago jugo quick manzes ginio gagas ktonj quick de kitani gon and kegiswi na gon Panapijikan when they know that he's Jago Junior Kotanan, Dodana Vanilla, Knotumagan. It will be rich.
We're going to start with the just an outline of the process, the 7-step process of identifying the preferred corridor. We start with a what's called a SWOT analysis, where we look at it's more sort of a subjective. We look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of each option, good and bad things.
Cactus Gigantic, Pagaway Gigantic, and the Mayam Ganjon Gigantic. Beacon Manzes Gestabok. Equal garbage to our journey, Gabination Watch, disaster, to Canon, then I'll get one language on my then Gionchi was Sege on Junegade. Here and the get Manzes Gestabok when Beacon.
From there, we after doing the SWOT analysis, we then identify the options that we're going to take through what's called the multi-criteria analysis, which is the looking at each of the options in more detail.
The SWOT analysis, I think mas coisa que vai ligar de vídeo é seguir o não ganhando que já dei não ganho vídeo é seguir o ninguém bona gosto não que vídeo é seguir não canga que seguir que ganho não que vai de vídeo é seguir não Egwent no kange mongyonji was sege gyonji minno todagema kema gyonji jiwa kiban kishpen jiwan joshua maga kibanake egotskena nan egake kishpen ashken tenokan tenokan kanapatsoy egake min nashken nan gyonji Yagishima is another Kendamazogo. Ega given a chicken to look at Kishin Master. Ego China the multi-criteria analysis guiding you and now the people gave one in my Stavastans and the non Kinjati. Ego machine exam. Que Chicago Kenjigatek is not a Kenjigatek, Egogek is a Chicago Kaninge, Chichigamaga Kishpin,
In the next step, we look at the different layers that we're going to put into the model to make that decision, to help make the decision on which is the best corridor option.
Which no machine gets taken on agri to a son and in case another kids got taken. They go man says he gave one guys say where she shagaji awaj manake and engaged magaj the jiwaj they go get again you go get one depend on can again, and in a sharp here. In another Kanga, this is the Agriculture signal again, not the Kinjagatic, Ego Gage, a great Kinjagatic, and in Ego Lanimatic, and in a sharp here, my great Kinjagatic.
So the next two steps is actually running the model. It's taking all those layers of information, putting them on top of each other, putting them through the computer software, which is called Geographic Information System software, and then going back and forth, trying different versions, different layers, because it's always changing. We get new information, and then out of that, we get a bunch of numbers essentially for each model that, and we'll get into this in more detail, and that helps guide us as to which is the preferred model.
And we know how to get this thing, Mina Nando Kigoga, Nando Kinjagatic, going as Nando Kingdom Watch, Yavakun, don't you can Magabani Java Watch, Nando Kingdom Watch, and he said, as you are requesting, no go be mounting Kingdom Watch, Egon and the Gok, and in the Shao Kyoge, and the Gish Chikamak, Gish, we just say get no can give a get a gish lost permission, you had Gish Chikamak. Egomima and Nanda Kilomatsogo, and the man is Nago Kive, Kish, Takokiban, Yuanagawi, Gawish. Gish Takokiban, man says, you know, Gish Takokiban, you have it, get this together.
So after doing that analysis with the computer software, we end up with a preferred corridor, and then we take that result and we go back to communities, we go back to stakeholders, we go back to the general public and get further comments on that, and that's where we are now.
Egomia is another kind of margin, and Egos Mima, and the Namwaj, and the Gagismakamaj, and is Nago Kiban, Indigo Gage, Dago Kibani, Manzesic, Yurikana. Here we know Gashmikamaj ago, Gagis not the Kinjagat. Egos Mina, Umaga Kudawaj. When they got Gabanaka the March, in Pinama, Minaj, Nanda Kinjagadik, Iman Snabel Darling, here Annie, Kine the March, here the Gagis McMarch, Irrigation Mamu Kiban, here Nikina, Eglis G. Kagwe, on the March, and he gave 9 in the Margwen, Imagiki Tagokiban, Gemai. Oshmege Godagishan, Judge Windamaj, Gary Nagash, we can imagine. Yagish Chimakanagish Master.
So that's how the overall process works. Now we're just going to go in a little bit more detail and tell that story about how things actually occurred. So we've got the SWOT analysis. 2021, we had 2 corridors that we started with. 2024, we added more corridors. And then in 2025, we selected one as the most favorable. And then we took that one with, so East Corridor West, and combined it with East Corridor East, and then did the detail analysis on those.
And the guy, let's go, you know, the March. I got 21 guys standing. You got Nanda Kinda March, and the existing corridor, Megod's got the book. Can you point which one is the existing corridor west?
Existing corridor west is the one in darker green.
Darker green. Okay, that's the one with the small line?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Your west guiding existing corridor west. You guys, we got the green guys now. Got the existing corridor east is the light green guys now. Yan got this thing. Yan the thing on magic or on the guy another kid on and he's Kigaja is not good. They go beyond for me, we got another kid on so kind of much. They got 2024, but again, it's going to another kindergarten, they go west 1, the red, they go the red. Yeah, the red one, and west 2 corridor, blue or light blue. Blue guys now. Yeah, we got the blue, light blue. Guys now when you west 2 corridor, yeah, 2024. You had the guy Nando Kingdom Watch, George. Got again, George, stuck with the guy thing and Chinando Kijigade. They got 2025 existing corridor west. We green, guys, now here, we guys, come out, you know, just now, keep on the year to kiss Takok. You have beaten up. One says again about Manchester. And mit schöne keine Damage jetzt bei der Damage gagway kindergarten der bei kindergarten grande chipment existing corridor west and existing corridor east. Yeah, and then on green guys now can you have keine Damage to back in the margin and you get into that over when no.
So this next slide, all we're trying to say in this slide is that they're within each corridor. Sometimes there's pieces that there's options for different segments, road segment or corridor segments. So we look at a whole range of different options. We can go this way, we can go that way. So without getting too complicated, it just gives us options for corridors.
Nas namaz soganana guys bigade manzes geshi nabonge bande kana kishunda rok negat na ginado jinando kinjade ani manzes geshi gande ke jmaji rok egot chande ke kish manzes singmani kontakten nan ikanga ketagoke eko manzes inigotago matash nesinima tagotyotne nangajana koseg nanan here jiseg wanapanagot sharp monkey here nizoe nikana here jojana koseg we had to go North Road Link guiding.
Next, we're going to talk about what are called factors, criteria, and indicators. And the simple way to describe these is these are the input layers that are used to do the analysis to identify the preferred corridor. So factors are basically a general term. Criteria are within each factor, then indicators are within each criteria.
이거 만세지 이거 내가 뜻은 예년주가 뜻은가 이런 벼con ganci nato che da mais che con dai non scava vincere con mais che una giocata exo che con io ani che snago che io e magari ne giocate con ci sta con che io vicana ego viene computer biologic Gadania computer. Ego simaga mima janata kedamaj. Daniel ke wanaga gishi mekamaj. Ego ke ga gishi mikigata iso ke wananya ke animation ke washi shagas da ko ima ke gas da shikaj. Ego ke nebe ke wanaga daniel nadak. Ego machina gitasa ke wanaga Nada que não pode. Eu chega me comode, que esnago que depois de esnago que vai de na chegada que não que vai me comode.
So I'll give an example to help try to explain factors, criteria, and indicators. So let's look at the biological environment. That would be a factor. So that's a general term, general description. Then within that, you have criteria, things like caribou, wolverine, bat, fish and fish habitat, and wetlands. And then for each criteria, you have indicators. The indicators are ways of measuring things like effects or impacts. So, for example, if you're talking about fish habitat, if there's a bridge, if the road goes across a river or stream, for example, what would be the area of fish habitat, aquatic habitat, that's affected by the road going over that river? So that's what we mean by indicators. So these together, mainly indicators, but these together are the layers that go into that computer model to help us decide which is the preferred corridor.
Miane begin rodzą czego stuczgatek i hörnegata szlang. Ego na dokneno gaitamanen i inego tako soni manek nokan ego ne ni matakok tnokan voyage shak kema atikok kema Wolverine ingagen ego genosek ego smierde garbage torture example to the kind of garage windang here ego environmental biological environment jade ke one ni magato ken imane ki kan imago panigato ki kan naming ge Bikang ego uget da kamego ke wanagata loken ego jeno tabitstone example genose ego takan factor in ego nen imai tagok ego nando kinjigate criteria takan ego nen no che quella nella strada and che sei che sei solo non che congiungi che congiungi sia quella non anche non sei andata sbagliata and che si chiama che magician da cocchio vicana e in giocava stone Tinokan Kawishi Ajol Demon Bridge Tinokan Gunchi Ajul Biznano. How I did this bridge, I engaged to get Jago, I get all that watch when I can you heard Chinanda Kinjagagan in the is case out when I can Gishpen Yimad is Takokio Ganjajro design, a bridge. Looking factors, criteria, indicators. No, understand.
I'm now going to call my colleague Ange Brooks to take us through the next few slides.
Okay, so this slide is just to give you an example of an indicator and the data set we're using. So as Dawn explained, the indicator is the things that we want the model to consider. And it has to be things that are measurable. So as in square meters, square kilometers, that kind of, or length. That type of measuring. So in this instance, we're looking at the crossing of the Attawapiskat River.
Ecco, viene Rakisko, quindi viene Don is in casa di Rakisko, but so the Gigons Suchati Yabajan indicator kind of had no Gegonan, Gagway, none of the Nagatiade, Yodapniade, none of the Nagatiade, you heard Kenjiade, and in Gage Chicamak Server, George Kenjiade, and in Gage Segi, George Mettaina de Gagonda streamer, Gema, and Gage Napat Segi, Gagon, Gema, and English reach your saying, you are to not can Takok Kiwa to be at the Goration that Gaganag started. I got 20 Otabit Stone here, Gavish Monk, hang out Wapscut River. We had the Abbott Storch. You were Egonen and you were Gish, not the Kijatic, Imanic Gavish Azure Monk, Imanic CV.
So this slide is explaining our weighting and scoring system. The weighting is how you prioritize each factor relative to the other. So you can see in this case, we gave equal weight to each factor.
You are now to begin to go now here and then. Abbott starts over. You have to look at what don't you again on again last none and in you get it again they get on you and engaged you about get to look at down on winter sing and on can't you got it go down on any that's got again. Again, 20% of these Pakistan hedge, Japit again, and engage Chimac so when they go here again, that's on here gap doesn't. They got me, my gun just sake, and even gish met take one is channel after station say. Ego bangi gishin's channel no the bus say I take das. My gun no much and get a cognizance of her percentage. You garbage storage, you're going to get what's going on and in case to get.
So under, as well as weighting, we have scoring. So each indicator under the overall umbrella of the factors was given a score. So for example, under socioeconomic environment, provincial parks was given a score of 60, while areas of conservation reserve was given a score of 20. And that's just based on relative importance of each indicator. And these scores were based on feedback that we heard from communities.
이것은 등록하는 이것도 가지고 socio-economic environment 가지고 되게 20% 되게 나스냐고 쓰지만 이것 지금도 나도 등록한 provincial park 등록한 Ontario provincial park 내가 처음에 park 나긴지가 돼 에과긴다스 이마견세 60 기세 Engelsgudse nenontasse noegagi nendangihe iwegagi pagendangihe imajiki tagi kagokenja tengrosogani ke sichingama provincial park. Ego conservation reserves. Tunakang gegonangas egagas nadadakin gegonjunje atapniga degema chikagwemanachia degwa image gombinche higa gashinagide egoini 20 is the egi apitagnes gagi kedoajo ekso gagi pagetamaje egomina in outfitter camps gajgadegen tunakan Oscripture in this kind of outfitter camps came because non-judge they wanted to go they won't get out of the kindergarten the kind of Oscripture came out lodges we have a shower which got a couple of yards I got my kid to look at cabin search I would start to look at I come in out 20 you kinagin chika de here gagi kitoa jawi.
Now, oh, do you have a question?
Are there the scoring? Is there opportunity to change the scoring?
Yes, there is opportunity to change the scoring. That's part of the feedback that we're looking for in these types of open houses. Yeah, so we can talk later. Okay. Okay, so now there are limitations to the model. And the overall direction of the model is guided by the inputs. So the model is only as good as the data that is being input. And we need to keep track of, be mindful, if you will, of the data that isn't included in the model. And as I said earlier, it would be information that wasn't quantifiable. One that's kind of popping off the top of my head is, for example, if we got information on berry picking areas, but we didn't get exact areas or the size of the area, that kind of thing, we can't put that kind of information in the model unless it's got a number associated with it.
They go limitations of the model. They go in they go kakinagegon. Given to David they got used not to kill the watch. They go garbage go on the magic going to that was second the guy going to I go to this and you got things over back to back in the guy magic to take money. They go once got all the magic and not the kid magic and the magic is stuck but yeah Kishvenega the many observer Jones back in the guy they go on the gate not the kids got take money on the bird the Gisharson of which can I get one to get that 여가 위난한테 괜찮아 되고 거기에 나한테 그거 했어 내가 현재 따고 세게 이게 애가 현재 따고 내가 되고 내는 들어가면 거기 위난 들어간 위난 가운데 내가 되고 그 마우스나는 들어간 위난 가운데 내가 되게 애가 지게다고 안되면 내가 내시다고 게 이거 machine napitstagi Ushbigade in Nanon and this Dagokin Nanon Away Gondon so Nanon Binan. Yeah, then I got the guys this.
All right, so this slide is just showing you an example of our factors and criteria weighting. I just want to pull out one example, physical environment, all the criteria are weighted identically 20%. And then the weighting was also identical for each criteria, but you can see that some of it is a little bit variable depending on how many criteria we have under each factor.
이거 지금 나기다 생각이 있으면 이가기시 느낌하지 이는 들어간 그다음부터 physical environment 이거 이마키 가이스너 대국의 내배 이거 예사게가닝 이거게 시빙 이거게 비고 기타크mek 내배가도록 나는 이 시나나게 스타지를 이거 되게 무한세긴 이거가 스파바테 이거는 들어간 greenhouse gases 나는 들어간 이나는 이거 가나게 스타지 이거 저기 다스는가 어머니mek criteria weight 이하는 20% 이거 Shibigade Guane, ego this Hue, Agidas and Japanese say, Gagi, Mekamaja, 4% Shibigade, then I'm going to be Debigate again. Your physical environment, Kashibigate, Nijin, Shibigate.
This is just another example. This one is biological input. You can see that each criteria is given the same weight. And there's some criteria that have no weighting applied to it. And that would be chimney swift and eastern whippoorwill. And that's because we're outside of the range of those species. So we're not going to apply a weighting to that because we don't want that to affect the results of the model.
Biblical basement and Yagagish Bikamaj, I got Chilak, Dasan Binaga, but Saj, Yagan, Kagishan, and Kindamaj. They go Ibidemiga, they can go Egwen Imagadokin Imagewa Shakinosik Pinesijak Oyagigo, Ego Gaganok Imaginavisok and Ganok Ganoajino, Ganoajino Tajari, where she should do not can Igadebe as a Ganyawaj Venok, none of the Imaginavisok species of risk do not come.
So this slide shows you in map format what the output looks like. And basically the less preferred areas are darker orange and the most preferred areas are darker green.
As Aqui mas neganing tapos and yeah, maar the basics guys we got the green guys is now hier dat wij document iemand is document ik got red guys miskag ik had de bagage ik had some version dat je gaat de grond kies
And these are more or less the same results, but this is, as you can see it in tabular format. So this makes it really easy to see that option F1 is less preferred than option F2.
Ik kom hier, deze kan ik om je eens niet zeggen hoor. Ik ben dan gaan niet te gaan tegen. Ik ben dan green guys nou kan binnen dan dat je gaat tegen magic is dat ik ben. Ik weet je nou dan kouwen en kan ze gaan tegen dan kan je dan dat je gaat tegen mij in dat je arbeidsschade red guys is began tegen.
And still looking at these segments F1 and F2, using the example of indigenous land and resource use, it's more obvious in the map on the right that option F1 is more preferred than option F. I'm getting confused with these two, hold on. F2, the option on the right, is more preferred than F1, which is the option on the left. And that's because F1 has greater area of indigenous values than F2.
No, I'm confused.
F2 is more preferred than F1.
F2
F2,
is more preferred
yes. Yeah.
Ik weet F2 als we gaan tegen wanneer je gaat tegen kijk we mensen gaan tegen ik heb dat je gaat tegen ik weet F1 kan China nou kan soort je als je kijkt naar snap being kijkt naar ja het schading aan de gaat tegen je begrijpt het schading tegen ik ga continue te gaan tegen.
Okay, so this slide is just the overall results of all of the corridor options, which are shown below, and all the numerical values. So keep in mind that the darker red is least preferred and the green is most preferred. So you can see that option 3 overall is coming up as more preferred.
Ik hoop dat we dan again na de kindermargin na ik ook al dan aan green gas nou kan dan net daar inego je kijk we dat niet gaat tegen ik maar je zou gaan tegen ik wat snel dan als we Scooby gaat tegen speel option 5 je gaat Scooby gaat tegen kan je China gaat tegen wat je gaat tegen.
So this is just a map of the location of the Attawapscat River crossing. We have this in here because we just want to highlight that the location of the crossing for this river has been shifted slightly from our original options, and this was mainly based on feedback that we got from Martin Falls First Nation. So the original crossing was a little bit further upstream, but due to concerns in the community around sturgeon spawning habitat, I think it was mostly around sturgeon, we shifted it further downstream.
Ik kom hier te zeggen, we zeggen tegen Geji Azure imanek Geji Azure biznaning ego pagi gönjans otanangi gane jigada ego nanti gönja Azure ego dinawach wedake upstream Podnedanog manwete gyavach negamiam gyavach vete chikistav krone ego swedek nawach Nedano Gisnodomach from Martin Falls. Imakima Norwich Gisnau Commenting Jajra Mugan Equi Nameok Gazi Kenmendog Gajawach, Yurgagan to Meshkut Sig.
So after all of the work that we put into the alternative assessment, this is the map showing our preferred corridor. That's the one that's all the different colors, and you can see the grayed out options on the to the east, the right-hand side, that are the least preferred options.
It will be a option 2. To go and
Sorry?
can you repeat?
Oh, this is just a map showing the preferred corridor of the road.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. You don't need to talk about that. It's just the overall corridor.
We were in the Ninja Gashmik we were masses and the gate is about to an Yamikana. We were guy nak take your Kimas Negan, you and the gay Namokaban Yamikana.
Great. And now I'm going to hand the presentation over to my colleague, Michelle.
My name is Michelle Nasir. I'm working with a team that's working on the Aboriginal and Treaty Rights and Interests work as part of the overall assessment of the proposed Northern Road project.
Muito obrigado, Lagos, Michelle is the caso. Ego da China, in outros lados estão, deixa eu aqui estar ligado, bacana. Deixa eu ver aqui que é quando o gajo me segue, ani que segue, que tu não canta, deixa eu ver que não há que é quando não canta, ani que se coach, que nada que diga daqui.
What we're trying to do is undertake the Aboriginal and Treaty Rights and Interests assessment by getting, where possible, information from communities. So I know Carson spoke earlier about our Indigenous Knowledge Program and how that's going to feed into our assessment process.
Ego en godon na man gabstad kan snabe darling ani geno ke gona so boga kaje ken tomar na ke gonga kaje ken tomar ninga ke na budak so go ke gona ni go and engaging in the march and where I should get one of the good go get that go treaty and Aboriginal rights here in our guys and as the Schnabbat Sarge and you know as a big chin march and then you todo march of random guy one and taking a gash chin way. Kan February March. Egonen non che mi seguono manche.
There are two main ways that we're hoping through our Indigenous Knowledge Program, the communities would like to share information. One is utilizing information that they already have, so whether that be existing Indigenous knowledge or what we are able to find online or that's publicly available that would form the basis of our baseline conditions.
Equinon, Kagwe, Takwana Margin, Nenon, Ashakai, Kayan, Nenon, Kagai, Kindak, Zoganon, Ashakinan, Kanikanan, the Mangin, here, Shitabanika, taking Humanike. And you get English with Sandbank, and you engage a great Mushkaganamik, and you engage a great Trinamik. Nine again, and get the Schnabout, and you're going to get a kitchen in the Meg in Nanya, the way got Schnaberry. They go magic, Kagre, Takoniga, take one in your Chicken Kigo. And engage Chichikamakishan. Nanyan tako chanjiga kwe ega Jojoan twing nanyan ega ke chanjima segway. Okay.
The other way we're hoping that communities share information is taking on project specific, so specific to the Northern Road Link, a Indigenous knowledge study that they conduct within their community, or participate in our field programs.
Egoing again, thank you, Nanon Otana Gagip Dojaga taken the Nadu Kenjigan studies of Kadojaga taken Binananda Koke, Jutagas taken here. Indigenous knowledge guys got taken. I'm very big one and con they got taken. Kill up as we China march to get the one got taken. I got me taco pugon mas tarastek and engaged together so you a key can give out big can you know and Arbeitsstrategie, ja, no, chicken kwe chicken kwe kanal chigate gwendega uzam chu mas chicken so and engaging is wise kwe chicken on the bank kwe they can have to mas chicken kwe mage gonta kwe they go to paketing at the china kegina and yes, I want to make a segment.
So on this slide here, we're showing the timeline of our Indigenous Knowledge Program that's going to help us feed into our Aboriginal and Treaty Rights and Interests assessment.
We got to go to the local demolition watch. Then I gave on the guy, it's another kind of watch. It's just taken here. Imagine that what you got taken here. Get one guy, go is not the can take it. No can. We can like my guy. We get his dog when you know that got taken back up. You can love to give out in what you say. I need to go. I'm speaking of the gonna pitch. Get one. It
is in line with our overall NRL project schedule, and the hope is that communities are willing and able to participate in Indigenous knowledge.
You go, and I think we have to go. Okay, Todano here, Chicago, but to the kilometer, yet, a great Tabunadovan, when 기는 녹화는 신화백 아닌 게 기는 저것이 그런 게 건是그나마 는 이거 녹화한 이거 기억에 건 내게 니칸게 원하다 그렇게 내가 오야시셔 이거는 그냥 신화백 아시거든 이거 저기 그 Ashwatthayvan Tagatske, Koyak Chikakwe Tagotte, Chikalama Chikadekske, Ego Chikakwe, Anakichkade, Ani, Yokesh, Kalama Chikadekishan, Nikala Panagotan, and Nikakwe, Anachikade, and the Geshtabatan.
This diagram that shows the timeline is also available on our poster boards, and we're welcome to discuss that with us after the presentation, and happy to share information on it.
Ego mi otan ni gana na maznak danigan kishin joshme vitash da moy knaima kishin ji emi haik ego tagoge 이거 워시메 위나데 키노메키고 잔치 저거지 마이크 이거 그린드 마이크 아니 이거 지금 나오는 거 같은 traditional indigenous knowledge.
So for us, value components are a term that's used in environmental assessment, but for us, they refer to aspects of the land, so that includes water, fish, medicines, and berries that are important to communities and could be potentially affected by the project.
이거 내가 가윈 얘기하는 드럭한 나는 갖다고 쓰는 이만하게 이거 스피가되는 나는 게 그거가 뭐지 이거 진짜가 뭐지 이거 드럭한 예 맨날 야하고 기는 가이는 유행 예 맨날 난 Kishima Kitlakan, Egoge Nanon, Tlokan physical environment, Katago Kinimage Gonakikan, Ego Nebigoge, Ego Nebikan Gadokin, Egoge Rajishak, Inojek, Places Nanon Gutlakan Ake, Gegon, Egoge Namin Gatagok. For
the Aboriginal and or treaty rights and interests discipline, we have two main value components. One is Indigenous use of lands and resources, and the other is cultural continuity and well-being.
Ego imagine Aboriginal treaty rights and interest gegen Schnabberg sagen Egonen Bebemushkuri Kichanamangan Ego Tagoga Kichanaman Ego Imanishin Gegonan Stavassan Inigo Garbage String Ego Dashtago Image Gonagatagokin Akikan resources. Ego mina kotego vegina nashna be kajman kai nashna be so go vegina ke bonga ka todo moina ego ge hoe ani neshkana vatmen yo vegina ke patsuna ego ani neshka be mashko gana vegina kitta nashna be minigoina Nega Israel Naga technology than Aboriginal treaty rights and interests.
And we have a poster up here that goes over the indicators that are part of those two value components, and overall how Indigenous knowledge plays a role in informing all the other value components of this project's environmental assessment.
Everyone that get the money like the guys you had a guy not the kid the march I got Winter Steppigo and no gate sugar normal to get take when the sugar quick and normal to get take you is not the kind of budget.
So for Aboriginal and or tree rights and interest assessment, we're looking at a three-step process. So as this is a First Nation led process, Webukwe First Nation and Martin Falls First Nation's goal is to develop an understanding of the Aboriginal and or tree rights and interests that are asserted within the project study areas.
Ego Himagawi Jigalawa Jigadeg Gradog East Jikada Webukwe and Martin Falls. We know the is Jigagwenis Tadog and is devastating and on Aboriginal treaty rights page and they go be no they go on Kina and Gag Kanam the Megan Gagagwini Gan and the Main Hima Guy Shigagwe Gawish Mikanagawish Manajigate and the Gagish Tago Kibane they go gonna be in the Shikanan we know and Econan Nanogaki Kagwe, Tagotek Manigaki Kagwe Mashkatek, Imanike, study Gaz Nadu Kinjada Gego, Ima Mikana Gawi Sugar, Nanjigade, Chikishi, Babam, Yane,
So through this shared understanding of rights and interests, we would be better positioned to have discussions with communities about potential impacts to their rights.
Chigagwe Peters, Chigadik Savani, Yagi, just say, Gish Chigamarak, Yagishan, Yapan, Mat Segi, Awash Magic, Kenjigadegman, Yajanju. We just say, Gabaj, what the Liganji, Kapetas, Gigante, Manago, I need Chigamarak, you go, Kapeto Gigate, you go here, Beacon like I first Gatic, and engaged Chigamarak, you got this wash my Chigamak and Gatic, and engaging and you hear Gish, was quick off the language of Kinant, you guys, Pakistan, the main Jigish, Chigimano say, you going was a yes, not that way. They want to wash John say when they got a gave on to just say, you had the kind of match together.
And then together with communities, we can work with them to develop ways to avoid, reduce, or mitigate potential negative impacts while enhancing positive effects that can support communities in exercising their rights.
It could be in the way, as you get ready to Pakistan, lots of what you say on Mama or Hitchikins, Chigis, you can all say when you got to be. But the main gate one, they got get Chiki, they got to get look at they got to get great economics, they got to look and it's for the main, they got get the bus, the main they got to be keep the main to look at. They go with to get great, and look each got they can Nós tínhamos coisa que a igreja nos chegava aqui a igreja que com uma eu acabei de que na grossa cada dia ani que esmat sei quando não get a coisa que não mas cada dia dus dan Kevin Juigi going to the family second. Juga gue kinjaga tegen. Dus juga bisa stegi gina de kaji snabe yang tako dan kaji kecil mega gina kaki mina going yang sobe gina ji mat sen organ snabe yang yo juga gue kinjaga tegen dan ji tako nega tegen jalan kinjaga tegen. Umaga juga gue strategi heb ik gezien, maar
And I promise this is the last slide from my end. This is a slide showing our overall study areas for the Aboriginal and Treaty Rights and Interests work in teal, green, blue, sorry, can't really see the colors right. That is our local study area. And then which is where we assess for our valid components, and then we have the bigger regional study area, which is in yellow.
ik ben kainak kitegi mi bego ima is bin segi education gue kenjaga de mas organizan na de kenjaga ga negativa para kita mas na bin sa kainak kitegi aqui mas nega.
So. The blue one is the higher.
The blue one is like the local study area for the valid components.
The blue guys now be Miami in segi I got yellow guys now that go here to get not the kids got again. I got you know what guys say. Just like when they got here to go in academic again.
And the yellow one, that's the regional study area, is to look at information on a larger scale and look at indirect effects. For both of these, they were shared with communities, and we did receive feedback from communities, but we're always open to having discussions with communities on all these. Which?
Ik kom hier kijken dat we blue hier heb ik gehad dus aan de kindergarten. Blue guys in de BJ hier. Ik had yellow inego taco meer in de als ik kijk naar de march maar naar de kindergarten. Regional hier kijk hier. Ik kom hier weet je.
James, you'll be happy to hear that this is the last slide. I'm sure you're a bit tired. Okay, next steps. As we talked about earlier in the presentation, now that we've identified a preferred corridor, we're taking that out through this open house and through other channels to you as community members and also to the public and stakeholders to solicit further comment, and then at some point in the very near future, we'll finalize the third corridor.
We go near much enjoy again like the because next steps. I mean, we now get to go ahead and begin. Kema muhita ko umaga kato juga dego ego chiki kagwe ani ge kinoy ne dame kwen chiki pagit na me kaso yo ko ne ka kinaj monto ate ani is not to make ega ge is not to make yo chiki kagwe na de kin dame ko no washne ego ye kagwe Fransız İngilizce kaki paketa march andem keki temamong keban Fransız ego inigo kani Miami ni ma inigo sta kego Fransız ego in with corridor going to march. That's 2 kilometers, right?
2 kilometers.
Yeah, I go ahead. Nijin, the Babajagadeg, the Sudhaman, Gagasing, the 6 kilometers, Gajagadeg, Egogetchin, basic, the Bahaman, Shangwish, Getchin, 7 again, then 2 kilometers, 1.24, 1.25 miles, Getchin, 7 again, then me, corridor, inego manzezi mimagesi dagok ilegaj domadzie before corridor. Ego też nan kaya kendomajen ani gegina is often make sense of nomad was making country kenda but ani ge de wechi cisnagan ben and guy the march they got this ani gabanski kakadwaja degman was me chiki unji kena kwande chiki snagan again in my guy the march
He isn't just a great translator, he also does metric to imperial conversions on the fly. That was really impressive. James. Thanks again, James, for all your hard work doing this. I know it's not easy. So with that, we'll open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions, and then we'll take questions. And then if people want to have more conversation, we can meet at sort of the back center table there and sit down and have conversations there, and we can talk about any questions you have or concerns or suggestions. So any questions out there?
Oi, Ishmael, the Gagwed, I go get Ishmael just the mark, what do you go in my at the back, what you go get Yamihan Ishmael, maybe you go be good.
Okay, with that, if anyone wants to join us at the center table at the back, come on over and we can talk about the project.